Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Freaking just get started. Somebody's at the front door. I don't know if you could even hear that. I couldn't even hear it in my ears, but I saw a little spike where, the audio was coming in. I'm like, what the heck just made noise? Was that me? And I look over and she's piping up about somebody at the front door every second of every day. Anywho, another day, another, newsy day kind of thing. We got some coaching updates. It's kind of more of the same, at least so far as the Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst thing, which is it's definitely, probably getting done, but nothing is done yet, so we don't really know, but definitely probably getting done. However, we are moving much closer to a definitive answer. By the time you're listening to this, it might be a definitive answer on Jeff Hafley. Last I looked this morning, he was at like 55% to get the job. I'm guessing that's skyrocketed to 90-something. So we're going to talk a little bit about those two things, and then we'll see where we're at after that. There's a lot coming in here. More and more news about the Jeff Hafley thing. But obviously the more interesting aspect is, okay, what are we looking for? Again, like it's you mourn it if you are even upset, you mourn that he's gone. But then you get excited about, dude, which defensive mind do you want to get in here to be able to utilize Micah? Which again, I think is the question. It doesn't have to be the sole question, but it's kind of the sole question. Like, which guy is going to take what? In other words, like what is like the ideal Micah defense or defense that, let's say you had a Micah, what kind of thing could you do? Because a lot of defenses, it would be great, but you would need somebody like a Micah Parsons, and we don't, and so it's not the easy. Bro, there's kind of no limits here. So let's do it. You know what I mean? It's one of the perks of having a Micah is there's a lot of cool things that you can do that other guys cannot do. So let's figure out what that is. Let's find a guy that can run that, and let's get her done. You know what I'm talking about? Again, shout out to everybody who's still hanging in there. I think we're done peaking as far as the numbers go, but we're still staying strong as far as like beating out regular season numbers. So I really appreciate you. Keep tuning in, keep coming back. Again, one of the easiest ways you can support us over here would be to simply make sure you have your podcast or this podcast set to automatically download. That way you never miss an episode, no matter what. You get stuck somewhere with bad internet, no problemo. It's downloaded, man. You're good to go. All right, so why don't we start with this? This is a pretty nice little summary. This is from Diana Rossini. Spoke to a league source informed on the negotiations happening in Green Bay regarding Matt LaFleur's extension. Quote, unquote, everyone is being dramatic. It's getting done. Dumb organizations do dumb things. The Packers aren't dumb. So that, again, it doesn't really tell us anything we don't already, I won't say know, but assume, which has always been to this point assumed that Matt LaFleur, not always, but as of the last day or two, assume that this deal will get done. Again, it's not 100%. These things, especially, it's an off-season trait to be 100% sure about something and then have it be 100% the other way and then 100% the other way. We did that a million times with Myles Garrett. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Myles Garrett flat out wrote. So, first of all, it was 100% he's not leaving. They're never going to let him leave. Then Myles Garrett wrote basically a goodbye. He was like, yeah, so it's been a pleasure being with you guys, whatever. And there was some other detail to it, too, where it's like he refuses to play for somebody that's like not that's not a contender. He wants to be on a, his time's running out. He wants to be on a contender. And then 5 seconds later, oh, never mind, I'll sign with the Browns. Like, what? Like, was that seriously just you playing freaking hardball? That's crazy. And it was the same with the Hendrickson or Hendricks, who's the Bengals guy. And that one went on for a long time. It will, he won't, he will, he won't, he will, he won't, he. Same with the Raiders guy, Max Crosby. It's a very common thing to be, 100% positive one direction and then the next day be 100% positive the other direction. So we'll try to keep it at, let's say, 99% and not raise it from there. Tomorrow we could get some crazy report. I love the offseason, man. It's so ridiculous. Because people do this stuff on purpose. 100%. People love the ability to come out and say something and have it blow up. It is the ultimate clickbait. It not only because, that they want to do it, but because we want it too. So we're going to eat it up. There's just, people go so crazy over this stuff and they overreact to things. So it's such a prime time to kind of throw out a little hint and everybody overanalyzes it and turns it into something, something just absurd. In addition to that little nugget from Diana Rossini, there were a couple other things that popped up. The most prominent has been the ESPN article from Adam Schefter. The article says, Packers working on extension for Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst. It says the Green Bay Packers are working to bring back Matt LaFleur, general manager Brian Gutekunst, each of whom is headed into the final year of the current deal, and expectations are that there will be a contract extension for both, league sources told ESPN. Packers will continue talking to LaFleur and Gutekunst this weekend, working toward a positive resolution that is the more likely outcome, according to sources. Sources told ESPN that they would be surprised if the Packers don't complete extensions with both LaFleur and Gutekunst. Again, none of that is really new information, which, as you know, very much annoys me because, you pop down on the old computer and it's like, bro, breaking news, and you read it and it's like, bro, this is the exact same news as yesterday. But all right, thank you, frickin' Adam Schefter, for pulling an Adam Schefter. The other thing that popped up was an article over at Sports Illustrated. I don't know if who was this? Albert Breer. What we're hearing around the NFL coaching carousel before the divisional round. Some good information here, obviously, just in terms of general, coaching, whatnot. But scroll down. Matt LaFleur's negotiations with the Packers. Negotiations between Matt LaFleur's camp and the Packers are ongoing, and a number of teams have kept their eye on it just in case something went the wrong way, given the uptick in what established head coaches are making. For now, the overwhelming likelihood is LaFleur's there on a fat new deal, with GM Brian Gutekunst being rewarded as well. So, that is sort of the interesting element of this. RLS reached out and made this point that, if and when Matt LaFleur ends up getting signed, you're going to start to see the dominoes fall quite a bit. What are you doing, Josh Allen? What a stupid, stupid thing that was. Yeah, you want to talk about a team that cannot stop collapsing in the postseason. Look no further than frickin' Buffalo. What are you doing? But it is interesting to at least wonder if there's a couple teams out there that are slow rolling this a touch. I mean, you got to be careful. I mean, if you like a candidate, you got to jump on them because somebody else can jump in and hire them at any second. But I'm sure a lot of teams would be pretty upset if they jumped on a candidate and Matt LaFleur became available. It's like, oh, good Lord. So I'm sure they're closely monitoring that, as well as doing all their other crap. So all that to say, we have two new reports on Matt LaFleur, which are reporting exactly what everybody else has been reporting. Diana Rossini was probably the most interesting report, at least insofar as, the source that she had, which I'm guessing was less of a direct source and more of an indirect source, but still it was in much more strong terms, All right, why don't we take a break here? We'll come back and get to the larger storyline of the day. We'll be right back. All right, so I kept my little spreadsheet here with all the head coaching things. So why don't we do an update, and then we'll get to, obviously, the main story here. As for the Baltimore Ravens, the last time we had talked, Jesse Minter was the top candidate at about 44%. I've been checking that as it's gone along. Since we've talked about it, it got to 45%, then 43%. It's currently at, it's actually dropping, and Robert Saleh is starting to climb a little bit. It's at 37%. So that one is still relatively up in the air. Jesse Minter has continually been sort of that top guy for that job, but it's certainly not set in stone, and it seems to be trending the other way as Robert Saleh is picking up a little bit of steam for the Baltimore Ravens. I am a little surprised by that, considering I was, well, not just under the impression, it was explicitly said that they were looking for an offensive-minded person to pair with Lamar Jackson. And the top three candidates are Jesse Minter, Robert Saleh, and Brian Flores. It is a very defensive-heavy, Jeff Hafley. It's a lot of defensive-minded people. But, okay. Then we have the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons actually had a massive change. So Clint Kubiak was the guy. He was at 55% when we talked. It stayed at about 54%. It took a massive shift to Kevin Stefanski, one of the few offensive-minded guys. He jumped up Stefanski to 71%. It's currently at 84% that Kevin Stefanski gets the head coaching gig for the Atlanta Falcons, which is kind of cool to think about. Obviously, there's a Packers podcast, but just from an NFL standpoint, you look at Atlanta, you look at some of the pieces that they have, the running back, the tight end, the wide receiver. You always feel like, when are they going to break out? When are they going to do this, that, or the other? You've got a quarterback you still need to develop. You need to get an offensive mind in there. Their defense sucks too, so it'd be nice to figure that out, but the offense is going to be the strength of that team if they're going to have one. So it does make sense. Clint Kubiak also was in the running, but seems to be falling off. The Cleveland Browns have been pretty interesting. Grant Udinski was the guy that was kind of thought to be the top dog, but not by a ton. It was 36%, then 38%. And then came Jim Schwartz, and Jim Schwartz just has been skyrocketing up. Last I checked, he was at 40%. He's currently at 49% to get that job, with Udinski down to 27%. So Jim Schwartz seems to have the inside track for the Cleveland Browns, which just makes sense. Just feels like the right gig. I'd rather have Shadur's dad there, but, we can't always get what we want. As for the Raiders, and this is just freaking terrible news, I can't say I'm massively surprised by this, given, again, the guy's, off-the-field issues, but Brian Flores was the top guy for this job, getting up to, at one point, 47%, actually even for a very brief time, 53%, but up to 47%. That has slowly been declining and declining and declining and declining, and then just a pretty big drop-off today to where he is kind of vacillating back and forth between he and Clint Kubiak. As of right now, he is sitting at 16% to get that job. Mike McDaniel has skyrocketed up to 25%, but he hasn't skyrocketed nearly as much as Ejiro Evero has, who's kind of come out of nowhere to jump up to 40%. So as of right now, Brian Flores drops to third in the Las Vegas Raiders sweepstakes. Man, if nobody's willing to hire Brian Flores as a head coach, he is going to be in Minnesota forever. We need just anybody to hire him to be, DC / head coaching assistant or something. I don't know how he gets out of Minnesota, but he might just be there freaking forever. Oh, that was a beautiful pick there. Well done. I just put the Bills right back in the freaking game. The Pittsburgh Steelers, it's been Chris Shula all along. It remains Chris Shula. It's still sub 50%. He's at 40%. but Chris Shula remains the top option there. Brian Flores is second in those runnings as well, but just at 19%. So, we'll see. In Arizona, it remains Vance Joseph as the top candidate, although it is closing. So it was a pretty big. Clint Kubiak was kind of going down to about 10%. Vance was up to about 40%. That gap has closed quite a bit with Vance at 31, Kubiak at 23. I think as some of these jobs start to get closed in with other people, that maybe Kubiak was the top in, which I think was the Falcons or something. Suddenly it's like, well, he's probably going to end up somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a question of where. And then we've got the Tennessee Titans, which Matt Nagy has just absolutely. Oh, did he just throw a pick right away? Oh my goodness gracious! Well, we're going to be talking about that defense here pretty quick. But Matt Nagy has taken a commanding lead up to about 57% to get that job. Robert Saleh is the next highest at about 10%. Oh, I lied. It's like 70%. That may come back down, but Matt Nagy, the far out in front of that field. And then before we get to the Miami thing, the question of which coaches will be out or whatever, Matt LaFleur is down to 6%. So it's at about the lowest that it's been since January 10th. It started spiking up and down and up and down and up and down, and it has been straight down pretty much for the last 24 hours here. It'll creep back up as deals continue to not get done and people will speculate and wonder, but it's hit about a low for the week. Okay, that brings us to this situation. The Miami Dolphins, if we look at the odds to get a job here, nothing is set in stone, but Jeff Hafley is now up to 80% to get that job. Aside from Kevin Stefanski for the Falcons at 84%, that is the highest, that is to say, the most likely to end up getting a job. Well, that spike is directly related to some reports that have come out via Tom Pelissero. Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley has emerged as a frontrunner for the Dolphins head coaching job per sources. No final decisions made. More interviews are scheduled. 4 other teams have requested second interviews with Hafley, but he appears to be the leading candidate in Miami. Mike Garafolo, quote, tweeted that, followed it up by saying, meanwhile, sources say the Packers have begun work on defensive coordinators as they expect Jeff Hafley is going to get head coaching jobs or will get a head coaching job and will need to make a DC hire. So it's relatively clear what direction this is heading. Could a team emerge and jump out in front and steal Hafley and he goes to a different team other than Miami? Yes. Is it possible he doesn't get hired somewhere? Almost zero chance of that. He has 5 teams scheduling second interviews. He's getting hired. So that is a done deal. So that brings us to the question of, okay, what are we going to do? A decent enough question could be, how sad is this? How good was our defense? And we certainly can look at that at some point. I'm not doing that today because I'd rather jump headfirst into the more fun topic of what exactly do we want in a defensive coordinator? And I think it's a fun question that can be delved into as deep or as shallow as you'd like to. And ultimately, it doesn't matter because it's extremely hard to determine who is going to be a good or bad coach. It just is. I think Joe Barry was a guy that you look at it and say the guy was never successful anywhere, so we all kind of knew it wasn't going to work out. On the flip side, Mike Pettin was a guy that had had nothing but success everywhere he had been, so everybody knew that was going to work out, except neither of them worked out. So, I think we all thought, Saleh was going to be successful with the Jets, and he wasn't. And, you go through the list of people that we could have swore up and down. Look at the Baltimore Ravens. First of all, the Ravens have had a very good defense for a very long time. And then they hire Zach Orr, who we desperately wanted. We'll talk a little bit more about the Ravens in a minute, but to finish out the point, Zach Orr was like the guy. He's this genius, all this. Ravens defense wasn't good. That's not to say Zach Orr necessarily did anything wrong, but I mean, they were not any kind of a powerhouse defense. They ranked 17th this year via DVOA, despite being, I think, top 5-ish. I think maybe something like that. Where were they? 6th? Yeah, 6th. Which, by the way, this is not... Oh, wait a minute. Packers and coach LaFleur have agreed to terms on a multi-year contract extension, sources say. Finally, after extensive talks, the sides agreed to a deal to keep LaFleur in Green Bay, where he's 76-40-1 with 6 playoff trips in 7 seasons. Well, this feels like massive news that we need to talk a lot about, but what are we supposed to talk about? It's like, I don't know. I guess we get to test out the theory of how quickly these guys get snatched up, you know what I mean? I'll keep tabs on it to see if there's any details, but I doubt we'll get many more details than this. Ian Rappaport says, GM Brian Gutekunst is also getting an extension. The Green Bay Brain Trust is back. So that was kind of reported as well. That deal had probably been done for a long time. They just wanted to announce them kind of together. So once one got done, then they're, okay, I guess we're good now. Tom Pellicero says, so on the same day John Harbaugh, whom the Packers never discussed, contacted, or pursued, signs on with the Giants, and Matt LaFleur signs his extension with the Packers. Gotta clarify that, right? We have confirmation from Tom Silverstein. He says, can confirm both Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst have agreed to contract extensions. All right. So, continuity there. That brings us back to the original question, which is good, actually, that this is done, because now there's no interruption. Not that there necessarily would have been, because I'm guessing Matt LaFleur is not necessarily directly involved in the negotiations. You know, he's not sitting at the table with policy and whatnot, although there actually have been. I know they went out to dinner and whatnot, but anywho, now we can have Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst spend all of their time, as opposed to most of their time, focusing on the things that matter, which include finding a replacement defensive coordinator. And again, apparently that has already begun, which is also kind of telling about what's going to happen if you weren't sure. As kind of further evidence that, you know, Jeff Hafley is going to be gone. I mean, you can call it due diligence, I suppose, but the Packers essentially, it sounds like, have already moved on, and good, because, you know, it's over. Rob Domofsky, by the way, I'll keep dropping little tidbits here as it comes out, but Rob Domofsky says, per source, he's signed to a multi-year contract extension that is not a prove-it deal. Sorry, I'm scrolling here. Not a prove-it deal, but a real commitment. New deal for GM Brian Gutekunst and VP Russ Ball, also in the works. That was 19 minutes ago, because the Gutekunst deal is done. Oh, now Tom Silverstein said it's not completed, but it's close. Make up your mind, man. Packers won't announce until both are done. Okay. Anywho, I'm assuming it'll be the same for Brian Gutekunst. It'll be a actual commitment. And again, good. Not necessarily because it was the path that I would have necessarily taken. Was certainly on the fence about what direction to go, but I probably would have taken a different path. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I need policy to make a definitive decision. There needs to be a definitive decision. There either needs to be a long-term, you are our guy for the future type of a deal, or there needs to be a goodbye. And because there wasn't a goodbye, I was hoping that there would just be a very solid, strong, firm, we never pursued anybody else. There was never any question. It was always going to be Matt LaFleur, and we gave him a big, fat, massive contract for many, many years to come. He's our guy. No questions asked. Now, again, time will tell if that's the right decision, but I can tell you 100% it is the wrong thing to do to have a wishy-washy position on this. So I'm at least satisfied with that, and we continue on. But interruptions aside, that brings us back to the main theme here, and that is, what are we going to do at defensive coordinator? It also should be mentioned, DeMarcus Covington, our defensive line coach, is taking interviews. I haven't seen anybody else. I know Derek Ansley, he was not very successful as a defensive coordinator, but he was a former defensive coordinator, so there's some potential there, but we may be losing him as well, which it may happen anyways. We'll talk a little bit more about what I would prefer with him, but it's possible we find somebody and he has his own list of people he wants to hire, and that includes a defensive line coach. That does not include Covington. We shall see. I would assume if Covington is getting nods for a defensive coordinator job, most defensive coordinators would be thrilled to have Covington as their defensive line coach, if we're so lucky as to be able to keep him. But I'll tell you what, this is a decent enough spot to take a break, and then we'll come back and just start ripping through what I know so far on the defensive coordinator front. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, so there's several ways that we could approach this. I wasn't entirely sure, and I started going a bunch of different directions right out of the gate here. The first thing that I did was to say, you know what? Why don't we just start at the top? Why don't we just find the most successful defenses and then see if we can poach somebody, right? And that got to be a little fruitless because you look, okay, go right to the top at Seattle, okay? And then you start poking around and you look at, well, we can't take the head coach who is, let's be honest, the architect. For the record, this is where the Baltimore Ravens conversation comes into play. The reason that it does is their head coach, McDonald, I think is his last name, he's the former DC of Baltimore, right? When they had that dominant defense, and that was quite a play there. Oh, my goodness. He stayed in bounds, though. Why am I getting dizzy all of a sudden? I might be dying here. Am I passing out? McDonald was the architect in Baltimore. He goes to Seattle. Seattle has the number one defense in the NFL right now. So right away, that's kind of a problem because is anybody under him going to really do anything? Plus, I can't even take the defensive coordinator. I have to be under the defensive coordinator. And you look at a guy and he's got 2 years experience. I don't know, man. I don't know. And so I kind of poke around that way for a little bit. And I said, okay, how about this? And there's a lot of different ways that we can do this, and there's a lot of different ways we will do this. This is not meant to be the be-all, end-all. This is sort of day one of let's start poking around. But what I decided to do is trust that the NFL knows who the top candidates are and go see who's getting defensive coordinator interviews right now. And I figure that's probably a pretty good way to start this off. Sorry, I'm just going to watch the end of this game, and then I'll continue. I'm too distracted. All right, I'm back. Here's what we'll do for today because, well, first of all, we have a lot of time to go over all this. But beyond that, there are a lot of candidates. So I think today is going to be sort of an introduction into who seemingly, and there's a lot of fun names here. Again, like this is, I'm excited about this. I mean, Hafley is a good dude. He's a smart guy. I don't know what happened this past year. In fact, that was one of the things that kind of threw me here. I just want to bring this up real quick as far as what the confusion was. So real quick, in 2025, our Green Bay Packers defense ranked our weighted rank was 25th. 25th. Our overall rank for the season was 19th. And, again, okay, fine, but look at all the injuries. Okay, but do you understand? We didn't have Micah Parsons last year, and Lucas Van Ness was bad last year. Do you know what our defense ranked? Our weighted DVOA? We ranked 5th last year. Overall rank was 7th. So 7th and continuing to improve by the end of the season. We get Micah Parsons for a half a year, and we dropped almost out of the top 20. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I don't know. I freaking don't know. I'm open to theories. I don't know if they reworked the entire defense because of Micah and then never recalibrated. I don't know. I have no idea. Anywho, defense was bad, and it's exciting to be able to go into the season with a blank slate. And again, because now that we have Micah, and this is what we'll start doing, this is what I've already started doing, this is what I thought we'd be doing today, looking at who makes sense for us. Because there's kind of two questions. I'm just going to, I should save this for tomorrow because there's no point because we're not going to investigate it. But the number one thing that I thought of was, who are the best teams? What are the best defenses? What are the best defensive schemes? And then go find the best guy in that realm. And that's still a possibility, and we'll kind of work through that. The other thought, though, is let's assume you're a team that has, Xavier McKinney on the back end and Micah Parsons on the defensive line, and maybe throw a little razzle-dazzle of, I say razzle-dazzle as they're doing a trick play, San Francisco, for 0 yards. Well done. Sorry, I'm still distracted. We'll throw in Edgerrin Cooper in the mix, okay? With those things there, like what would you want to do? What would be your dream defensive coordinator with these pieces? Okay? I've kind of already got the answer to that, but I'm going to continue looking in, and again, we won't necessarily do that today, but those are kind of the fun things that we can explore. Okay. Very, very big list here. All right, so let's go through the list of some of these candidates. So, a lot of other teams have already, several different reasons, but they need defensive coordinators, and so interviews have started or have been scheduled for different people. So why don't we get started with Matthew Arujo. Not a super common name. He is currently the cornerbacks coach for the Miami Dolphins. It's one of those young rising star type of guys. In fact, just in 2021, let's put it this way. He went from Maine Maritime Academy to Springfield College and then the next year to Boston College, where he was just an intern/graduate assistant. He did that for 2 years before getting a job at Yale as a DB's coach. 3 years later, he's the co-defensive coordinator. 2018, he's a graduate assistant. 2021, he's co-defensive coordinator at Yale. That's kind of crazy. That same year in 2021, he got hired away, apparently, to the Bill Walsh minority internship for the Houston Texans. The next year, he goes to Maine as the assistant head coach/defensive coordinator before going to the Dolphins as a DB's coach. Did that for 2 years before becoming the cornerbacks coach. So anyways, very, very rapid ascent. He's also been through 3 different defensive coordinators while at Miami: Josh Boyer, Vic Fangio, and Anthony Weaver. Now, it's important for a couple reasons. Number one, because any criticisms you might have, obviously that complicates things, but it also works to his benefit. Number one, 3 different defensive coordinators, all of them wanted to keep him. Nobody fired him and went and found somebody else. That's number one. Number two, he was able to adapt what he knows to each one of their schemes, to be able to coach and teach each one of these individual styles. And then number 3, kind of going right along with that, he's learned from all 3. And then in 2025, there was a completely haphazard and broken down DB room. And you might remember, as much as I was talking trash, I shouldn't say I was talking trash, but I had pointed out that we got rid of Rasul Douglas at the right time and all that kind of stuff. He had a big bounce back year this year. Guess who that was with? That was with the Miami Dolphins this year under several people, but including Mr. Matthew Arujo. Rasul was with Green Bay in 2023 and Buffalo, whatever. He had a very good year that year. The next year in Buffalo, he had a 53 grade, 51 coverage grade. It was done. It was over. He goes back to Miami, 74 grade, 74 coverage grade. 398 yards given up, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 9 pass breakups. 67 passer rating when targeted. So far, he's only interviewed with the Jets. It may be a little bit early for him in this cycle, but so far, that is the one interview, and it's somebody to keep an eye on. It's going to be a big question, because you always want to find those geniuses, and you're going to have to find them early. But you might find him too early. He might not be ready. He might not be good enough, etc. But somebody to keep an eye on. As far as like his scheme or philosophy, no idea. He's had almost no time to do anything. And again, under 3 different defensive coordinators, what's going to come out the other side as his philosophy is anybody's guess. Then we have Mr. Ephraim Banda. He is the Cleveland Browns safeties coach. I'm so happy the Seahawks are doing this to the 49ers. Screw the 49ers, bro. But Banda, he is 44 years old. He's not like a super young guy, but he is still a relatively fast riser. Again, probably a little too early, but as of 2022, he was still coaching in college. He was defensive coordinator and safeties coach for Utah State. He's been the safeties coach for the Cleveland Browns since 2023. So, guy's been in the NFL coaching for 3 years and is getting DC looks. His path largely has followed Manny Diaz. Kind of followed him around from place to place to place. He's currently the Duke head coach. But I guess Manny Diaz is known for an aggressive attacking front kind of a philosophy. So it's assumed that that's kind of the DNA of Banda. A video over at Colts Film Room said that he's very similar to Manny Diaz, very persistent about getting free runners and hits on the quarterback by creating confusion up front. Honestly, to a fault at times. Defense will lose gap integrity and give up huge plays in the run game in an effort to create havoc. High risk, high reward scheme. So attacking front is kind of the core there. Then there is DeMarcus Covington. By the way, Banda has already interviewed for the Jets and Cowboys defensive coordinator jobs. Those are completed. DeMarcus Covington, we know him because he's been with the Packers now for a year as our defensive line coach. It's honestly hard to fall in love with Covington. I had a Jets podcaster reach out and ask me about Covington because he had interviewed with the Jets. Pardon. And it's kind of an unfair assessment because, who knows who's responsible for what. But again, our defense fell off a cliff. Rashawn Gary kind of fell off a cliff. Like, aside from Van Ness, who got better? Even Wyatt down the stretch there. I mean, we think of Wyatt as having a great year. He had a good start to the year, just like Rashawn did. Rashawn had a phenomenal start to the season, including sacks and everything, but then just kind of fell off after midseason. Same thing happened to Wyatt and everybody else. So it was a pretty lackluster performance up front, which ultimately was Covington's job. Again, doesn't mean he'd be a bad defensive coordinator, but it just makes it hard for me to kind of fall in love with the idea of that. Not to mention, we picked him up as a defensive coordinator that got fired. Now, it's a little unfair because the entire coaching staff got fired, but, he didn't get picked up as a defensive coordinator anywhere, so, I don't know. He is young. He's 36 years old. It's insane to me and upsetting how many coaches are younger than I am. But, he did work under Bill Belichick for a very long time. He was not just as a defensive coordinator for that 1 year. He was also their defensive line coach for 4 years. He was their outside linebackers coach for a year. So, obviously that's a defense that has done things the right way under Bill Belichick for a very long time. So you could probably do worse. Again, I'm just a little gun shy with how bad things went, and it's probably not fair, again, to blame him entirely, but I don't have a lot to go off of to get super jacked up about it. Here's what Bill Belichick said about him back in 2022. DeMarcus does a really good job. He coached linebackers, coached defensive line, really understands the entire defense. I'm sure he could coach a lot of positions on defense. Young guy that's really smart, works hard. The difference between our interior guys and our outside guys is quite distinct. Pass rush, pass coverage, interior run play, so forth. It's a lot of different techniques to coach. He's very well versed in the fundamentals and schemes. He does a good job. Really glad we have him. We also have to remember, Covington is not going to run Hafley's scheme. They're very different people. Hafley brought him in and tried to get him to help with Hafley's scheme. Covington would be running a different defense and a different defensive scheme, and we'd have to kind of learn that. Here's what Covington said about his own defensive style when he was the defensive coordinator of the New England Patriots. When you turn on the tape, what we want to see is a physical team, a team that plays with good discipline and fundamentals, and a team that attacks the football and takes it away from the opponent. That's what we're looking for from our defense, a team that goes out there and plays together and for one another. He does primarily operate out of a 3-4. A lot of these guys do, and so there's the option to possibly go back. That's not going to be a bad thing if we do. Maybe Rashawn is done as a Green Bay Packer. Maybe he's whatever. Maybe he also would do better going back to a 3-4 system. We drafted Van Ness when we were a 3-4 system. Pretty sure we drafted Wyatt when we were 3-4. Like all these guys were drafted with 3-4 in mind, and of course Micah Parsons can handle being in a 3-4 defense. In fact, I feel like he would thrive in a 3-4 defense. So there's really nothing that would be, oh boy, I don't know if we should do that. We just became a 4-3 5 seconds ago. And we were all excited because it was going to help us with run defense, which it didn't do, so who gives a crap? Well, and there we go. We got some breaking news here. Falcons are finalizing a deal to hire Cleveland Browns head coach and 2-time NFL Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski. Anywho, continuing on, and this one I think is going to potentially garner some interest, I have a feeling. And that is Dorante Jones. He is currently the Minnesota Vikings defensive pass game coordinator / DB's coach, has been since 2023. So if you're looking for that Minnesota Vikings flavor, and also the 2-for-1 of stealing from the Vikings and causing them to lose possibly their top asset outside of their actual defensive coordinator, this could be the move. He's coached every level from Louisiana high schools to Ivy League to CFL to SEC before becoming Brian Flores' right-hand man. He is one of the guys that, unlike the others where it's a little bit early, he's kind of gotten to that point where it's like, this is the next step, and you knew that it was coming. When you look at the trajectory of what he's done, again, spent time with he was actually with Wisconsin in 2015, Miami Dolphins 2016-17, went to Minnesota, went back to college as the defensive coordinator, then comes back with Flores, is the defensive backs coach for 1 year. They gave him a promotion, defensive pass game coordinator. So it's one of those things where it's like he is reaching his ceiling. There's only so many titles you can slam in there before somebody's going to steal him away and make him a defensive coordinator. And considering how desirable Flores and his scheme is, being able to poach that is going to be extremely desirable. He is the Flores 2.0 architect, pass game coordinator for Brian Flores. He's been the architect of a secondary that thrives on chaos and disguise. 2024 Vikings defense finished number 1 in pass defense via DVOA with a negative 12.8. 2025 Vikings defense finished number 3 in pass defense via DVOA, which ranks lower, but was actually a better defense with a minus 16.3%. The unit in 2025 led the league in interceptions with 24, passes defended with 95, and an interception rate of 3.8%, while also sharing the top spot in total takeaways with 33. And remember, they don't really have anybody in Minnesota. This is not a group that is loaded with talent. They don't have a Micah Parsons over there. They don't have elite cornerbacks over there or safeties over there for that matter. It's not to say everybody's terrible, but I mean, it is not exactly a loaded unit. And look what they were able to do with what they had. Jones, in his own words, focuses on players first, scheme second, and emphasizes over-communication. With the Flores influence, obviously, they're heavily aggressive. He uses the same illusion of pressure that Flores is famous for, crowding the line of scrimmage with 6 or 7 players and dropping into unexpected coverage shells. They have man-match principles. Unlike traditional zone coaches, Jones prefers a man-heavy system with match elements, asking DBs to be physical and compete at the catch point. Now, this is also one of those things where you're going to have to ask yourself, do we want to focus on poaching the best defensive mind with the best defensive system, or do we want to find a guy that's better suited for the players that we have? It's not to say we can't run this, but, you got to wonder, could we handle it? Also, very famous Flores is anyways for that hybrid front, 4-3-3-4 hybrid. But it's not talked about a ton. I mean, Packer fans, from what I can tell, are barely scratching the surface with this. There's like one name everybody's been talking about that I don't really understand. But outside of that, as I'm looking, well, 2 names. One of them I do understand. One of them that most of the actual prominent Packers people are talking about, I'm not nearly as excited as some of these other guys. But that's a name that I would assume needs to start getting some steam. Then there's good old Jimmy Leonard. And if you, you should know who Jim Leonard is. If you've been listening for a while, obviously we covered Jim Leonard back when it was, I think, what were we looking for? Pettin, or was that? No, it was after Pettin. It was when we got Joe Barry. Jim Leonard was one of the biggest names out there as a college coach. He was in Wisconsin. Phenomenal defensive coordinator. Packers wanted him. He said, no, I think I want to stay with the Badgers, which was kind of expected. He really loved being the Badgers guy, and I think he thought maybe he could become the head coach for the Badgers. That's when they went out and hired freaking whatever his name is, and that whole thing fell apart. Jim Leonard ended up leaving or getting fired, let go, whatever. He ended up having to go on a little mission to discover himself again, and he's worked his way back. And because Jim Leonard is Jim Leonard, extremely intelligent defensive mind, he has worked his way up very, very fast. And we were just watching Denver. That's what I was talking about. He's over there in Denver, and he's one of those guys that he's worked his way up about as high as you can get. He's got all the titles, and his next stop is defensive coordinator. And I have a feeling he will be a defensive coordinator this year. His title right now is assistant head coach, defensive pass game coordinator. So it is like the highest title you can get on defense, and has the assistant head coach title. Like, there's nowhere to go but up. They've done everything in Denver. That's the other reason why it's an important thing when you look at the titles. When teams do that, they're doing everything they can. I mean, as far as I can tell, these are just promotions and pay raises to keep him on staff. They don't want to lose the guy. And by the way, he has spent, scored another touchdown. He has spent 2 years in Denver. His first year, well, let's back it. 2022, he's at Wisconsin. 2023, he takes a year off, goes to Illinois, senior football analyst. The next year, Denver hires him. He is DB's coach / pass game coordinator. He goes right to the top. And then they promote him the very next year to assistant head coach, defensive pass game coordinator. This guy, he's at the top. In his Badgers era, 2017 to 2022, Leonard oversaw one of the nation's most prolific defenses for over half a decade. They ranked number 1 among all Power 5 teams in yards allowed per game at 288 during his tenure. They ranked number 5 in the nation, allowing just 17.9 points per game. They ranked top 3 in interceptions and takeaways during his span as defensive coordinator. Then going over to Denver, he's credited with modernizing the Broncos secondary and maximizing elite talent, one of the benefits of spending a lot of time in college, despite having a ton of NFL credentials as well. This is what's going to upset a lot of people, is that he's a Pettin guy. He actually played under Pettin and then coached under Pettin. He's done a lot of other things for a lot of other guys, obviously, but that is a big part of his foundation. But he modernized the Broncos secondary, coached cornerback Patrick Surtain during his 2024 Defensive Player of the Year campaign. Denver ranked number 7 in the NFL in passing yards allowed in 2025. Earned praise for maintaining a top 10 unit in 2025 despite a 3-week injury absence for Patrick Surtain, and successfully integrating rookie first-rounder Jahdae Barron. Leonard's system is a blend of 3-4 principles and high IQ disguises. He does a lot of sim pressures. This is one of the things. So we looked at this back when it was the whole Badgers thing. He runs very similar things to what you get in Minnesota. 7-8 guys on the line, and certain people drop into coverage. One of the things I would expect is probably more of the Micah Parsons type guys and less of the Rashawn Gary type guys, because you're looking for flexibility. The good news is we have the linebackers that can already do this stuff. It's just a question of, do you have the edge rushers that you want to do it? Micah Parsons, 1,000%. He was built for this kind of a thing. He is an inside linebacker, outside linebacker hybrid, like legit. By the way, we also have another guy that we just drafted that also is a hybrid inside-outside linebacker, interestingly enough. That's perfect for Jim Leonard. The front is fluid. While he uses a base 3-4, he frequently shifts into a 2-4-5 nickel against spread. As a former safety, his scheme asks a lot on the back end. Go figure. We have Xavier McKinney. He believes coaching starts with individuals over system. He's known for real instruction rather than just calling plays, ensuring every player understands the why behind the call. Now, again, we'll probably save this for tomorrow, but I'll tell you now, as of right now, this is my top candidate for our defensive coordinator job. I was kind of out on him last time based on a couple things that I had read. I don't remember what those things were. But as of right now, based on the players that we have and based on his pedigree and all, I mean, just everything, if I had to pick right now today, it's Jim Leonard. Continuing. Then we got Don Wink Martindale back in the arena. Currently a defensive coordinator out at Michigan, 62 years old. He's been around the block a little while. He's been defensive coordinator for the Broncos, for the Baltimore Ravens, for the New York Giants. In fact, he was defensive coordinator for Xavier McKinney, so that would be one thing that would be a pretty decent transition. He is, I mean, if your goal is to just be as aggressive as humanly possible, Wink Martindale is your guy. I mean, aggression is kind of the thing that's winning right now. You look at the Seattle Seahawks, where does that come from? That comes from Baltimore. Baltimore, aggression, right? That whole tree is about aggression. In fact, that's what it was when Wink Martindale was there. You look at Minnesota, it's aggression, right? It's just attacking. Obviously, these things come and go. Vic Fangio had, his time, and they still have a good defense, but that style has transformed into something, and it'll work its way back to something else. But right now, this is kind of what everybody wants. There's different ways to do it, and Wink Martindale has a certain way of doing things. But he is, if you just said, just give me the most aggressive, psychotic, crazy SOB you can find, this is your guy. While other coaches use simulated pressures to trick quarterbacks, Wink's philosophy is simpler. Send more than they can block. It's like, that movie from The Professional? Send me everyone. What do you mean everyone? Everyone! That's Wink Martindale. He is a mentor to many of the league's current top coordinators, including Mike Macdonald and Jesse Minter. So Mike Macdonald is currently the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, who have the number one defense in football. Jesse Minter, I believe, is going to be out there looking at head coaching opportunities. Widely considered the godfather of the amoeba defense. 2018 to 2020, he was with Baltimore. That was kind of his peak in Baltimore. He produced one of the most statistically dominant 3-year stretches in NFL history. Ranked number one in NFL in yards allowed, 307.8, and points allowed at 18.2. Finished top 3 in the NFL for 3 consecutive seasons in scoring defense. In 2018, his unit was the first since the 1934 Lions to not allow a second-half touchdown in the first 6 games. In 2022, he went over to the Giants. He inherited a struggling Giants defense and immediately turned them into a top 10 unit on third downs and in the red zone. He led the Giants to their first playoff win in a decade by neutralizing Kevin O'Connell's Vikings offense in the wild card round. In 2024, he went to Michigan, led Michigan to a top 10 national defense and a number 5 run-stopping unit. 2025, he maintained a top 15 unit despite massive personnel loss to the NFL draft, continuing the Ravens-style dominance in the Big Ten. Wink's system is defined by positionless aggression. He usually leads the league in blitz percentage, often exceeding 45 to 50%. In 2024 at Michigan, he blitzed at a 48% rate, fourth highest in college football. Zero blitz mastery. He's the king of cover zero, send everyone with no safety help. He bets that his pass rush will get home faster than a receiver can get open. The amoeba front uses standing defensive linemen and rushing linebackers to hide who's coming and who's dropping. It forces the quarterback to make hot reads on almost every play. That reminds me of Dom Capers' Psycho package, where you had, I think, one down lineman and a bunch of people just wandering around. That was the craziest thing. He had his NASCAR, and then he had the Psycho package. You just have one guy with his hand in the dirt and a bunch of guys just pacing back and forth. Obviously, man-to-man coverage is his style. His scheme requires elite island cornerbacks. Again, something to consider. If the corners can't win one-on-one, the whole system collapses. One of the other big problems was his... he's known for having a big personality. His departure from the Giants involved a high-profile fallout with head coach Brian Daboll, leading to his resignation. If I remember right, too, it was some kind of a weird thing where it's like he just left. I think the team just found out he quit when he was like down in Florida. Like he's screw you guys, I'm done. I quit. I don't care. Screw you. I hate you. Which isn't great, right? I mean, it's not quite as bad, I don't think, as Flores in my mind, but it's a similar kind of, I don't know how I feel about that. All right, next up, I'll try to go a little faster here. Chris Harris, New York Jets interim defensive coordinator and DB's coach. 43 years old, previously the Tennessee Titans defensive pass game coordinator. He has a safety-first identity. Like many on this list, Harris is a former NFL safety, 8 seasons, 88 starts, who views the game from the back to front. Again, with Xavier McKinney, that's not a terrible thing. He is known as a teacher coach, someone who prioritizes high-level communication and individual technique. His quick promotion to interim defensive coordinator for the final 3 games of 2025 was seen as a live audition for a permanent role. By the way, the Jets are interviewing defensive coordinator, so he is obviously on their list. Interim audition, December 2025, taking over after Steve Wilks was fired mid-December. Harris was tasked with stabilizing a reeling unit. Head coach Aaron Glenn praised the cleanliness of the operation under Harris, noting a rise in effort and a simpler process that allowed young players to play faster. In the first game as a play caller against the Saints, his defense forced a turnover on the opening possession. 2020 to 2024. In 2024, Tennessee, he led a secondary that allowed only 177.3 net passing yards per game, ranking number 2 in the NFL. In 2022 at Washington, he helped the Commanders' defense finish top 10 in scoring, 7th, total defense number 3, and pass defense number 4, 40-6. I love this so much. Screw you, 49ers. Harris's philosophy is rooted in simplicity and communication. As a former safety, he emphasizes vision. He wants his DBs to keep his eyes on the quarterback to trigger faster on breaks. In 2023, the Titans unit ranked number 1 in the NFL in red zone efficiency. He preaches shrinking the field and tight man match coverage near the goal line. He's considered a player's coach because he played in a Super Bowl where he intercepted Peyton Manning, actually. He has instant locker room credibility. He coaches with the mindset of what would I have needed to hear in the huddle. It's not terrible, I suppose. Then we got Jim O'Neill, currently Detroit Lions defensive assistant. It's like 10 o'clock at night. / safeties coach. He's 47 years old. Previously defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns 2014-2015 and the 49ers in 2016. So he's got experience. I will say, as soon as I saw him on the list, though, I thought I don't understand the Detroit Lions thing. I don't understand why their last defensive coordinator got hired away. I don't know why this guy would. I don't understand the Lions coaching tree thing. They don't have a good defense. I don't understand what we're doing here. But whatever. Probably means we're going to hire him because it's the one guy on the list I looked at and just went, eh. But he got his first job in the NFL for the Jets in 2009 under Rex Ryan. Wonder if he ever played with Jim Leonard. That'd be funny. And has since held nearly every defensive title imaginable. In 2026, he's being targeted as a stabilizer candidate, someone who has coordinated high-level NFL defenses, but is also comfortable in a supporting role under a strong head coach like Aaron Glenn. Obviously, that wouldn't be us. The safety whisperer, again, in Detroit, O'Neal is credited with the rapid development of one of the NFL's best young secondaries. I suppose that's fair. They do have a good secondary. Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, as much as Kirby Joseph is kind of a D-bag, those two guys are impressive, especially the ascent of Brian Branch. If we're gonna say that, then I guess that's fine. Under O'Neal's tutelage, Joseph recorded an NFL-leading 9 interceptions in 2024, becoming an All-Pro. He helped Brian Branch transition into a first-team All-Pro role, leading the league in forced incompletions among safeties. The Lions secondary allowed the lowest passer rating and lowest touchdown percentage in the NFL in 2024. Fair enough. His first stint as a defensive coordinator was statistically impressive with the Cleveland Browns 2014 and 15, despite the lack of offensive help. In 2014, led the NFL in lowest opponent passer rating, 74.1, and completion percentage, 33.3%. Pro Bowl factory, safeties Tashawn Gibson, Dante Hittner, and cornerback Joe Hayden all earned Pro Bowl nods under his direct guidance. O'Neal is a system chameleon who tailors his approach to the head coach he serves. Again, that doesn't really work for us. He would need to put his foot down and figure something out. From his Jets years, he carries a heavy focus on complex pressure packages and organized chaos at the line of scrimmage from the Rex Ryan tree. Relentless effort. His stated philosophy is being relentless and high energy. He believes in building a scheme from the position group perspective, designing plays that simplify the job for the individual player. Prioritizes safety play as the insurance policy for the rest of the defense. He prefers using versatile safeties like Brian Branch, who can act as pseudo linebackers or deep field hawks. Fundamental focus, he is a stickler for technique, famously telling his cornerbacks they must rely on fundamentals over pure athleticism to survive against elite NFL receivers. All right, I don't hate it as much anymore. It's still not my favorite, but I get it, and it could work, and I understand it. Another top candidate, though, potentially number 2 on my personal list so far, is Christian Parker, Eagles defensive backs coach and pass game coordinator. Now, the biggest knock here is it's a Fangio guy. Now, again, Fangio's fine, but there's going to be a lot of similarities. The last time we hired a Fangio guy, it was Joe Barry. Now, this isn't Joe Barry. I get that. Joe Barry was his own man and all that stuff, but I'm just saying, it's whatever. He's just 34 years old, very, very young. Obviously coached in 2024 for the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Considered a young prodigy. He was at Virginia State, a D2 school, in 2014. Then went to Norfolk State, which was an FCS school. He finally made it to Notre Dame in just 2017 as a defensive analyst, which is just like a nothing. They took the ball away again. This is the greatest game in the world. Then he was a defensive analyst again in 2018, this time for Texas A&M. So think about this. He's at these very small schools, and then he goes and gets these defensive analyst roles for 1 year at Notre Dame and Texas A&M. These are like just learning roles. 2019, defensive quality control coach or quality control, whatever, assistant, whatever they call it. For who? Green Bay Packers. Spends 2 years as our quality control guy, then goes to Denver in 2021 as a defensive backs coach. So he spent 2 years as a quality control guy for the Packers, then gets a job not as like a cornerbacks coach or whatever, as a defensive backs coach, meaning he's in charge of the corners and the safeties. He does that for 3 years in Denver and gets a job as the DB coach and pass game coordinator in 2024 for a unit that, by the way, had the most elite defense in football by a mile and won a Super Bowl. How are you a quality control coach in 2020, and 4 years later, you're a pass game coordinator and DB's coach for the Super Bowl winning Eagles? Parker is widely considered the next big thing in defensive coaching. Again, this is why he's very high on part of the reason he's very high on my list. At just 34, he has already spent 7 seasons in the NFL and is the primary protege of Vic Fangio. His reputation is built on an elite ability to simplify complex coverage rules for young players, as evidenced by his work developing 3 different all-pro cornerbacks at 3 different organizations before the age of 35. Parker was the architect of the secondary that propelled the Eagles to the Super Bowl in February of 2025. In 2024, he led the NFL's number 1 passing defense, 174.2 yards per game. He developed Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean into immediate starters. Both were Defensive Rookie of the Year finalists. In 2025, both Mitchell and DeJean were named first-team All-Pros in their second season under Parker. Mitchell allowed the lowest completion percentage in the NFL, 42.4%. 2021 through 2023, when he was in Denver, there's also Patrick Surtain, handpicked by Vic Fangio to lead the Broncos secondary at age 29. Developed Patrick Surtain into a first-team All-Pro by his second season. In 2022, his secondary featured 2 All-Pros, Surtain and Justin Simmons, on the same team. Parker runs the modern Vic Fangio system, but with a more aggressive, teacher-oriented tilt. He believes the secondary is the engine of the defense. If the DBs can match routes perfectly, the pass rush is guaranteed to get home. His specialty is sophisticated match coverage that looks like zone but plays more like man once the receivers enter certain windows. Parker is known for grilling his players in meetings. He doesn't just ask for the assignment, he asks why is this the answer to ensure they can adjust on the fly. He famously refuses to box players into roles. He taught Cooper DeJean to play boundary corner, slot, and safety interchangeably. So if you are primary, again, that's the cool thing about this. There's different flavors, right? You got the aggressive guys, you got the this, you got the that, you got whatever. There's a little bit of everything. If your whole thing is find me the next young up-and-coming guy, Christian Parker's the guy. It's unlikely we're going to find anybody that is sort of the protege type of guy quite like this. By the way, the Packers are going to have to move fast. The Dallas Cowboys are already closing in on him. Parker is a finalist candidate. He interviewed on Wednesday, January 14th, and reportedly blew the staff away with his plan to fix a Dallas secondary that ranked last in the NFL in 2025. If the Packers are interested, they're going to need to move very quickly because Dallas is ready to make an offer, would be my guess. Seattle pulled their starters with 9 minutes left in the game. Screw you, San Francisco, you jagoffs. Okay, continuing on. Oh, this is going to be a long episode. I'm sorry. Charlie Bullen, currently New York Giants interim defensive coordinator / outside linebacker coach. 41 years old. Previously was the Illinois outside linebackers coach / pass game coordinator back in 2023. Bullen's 2025 season is one of the more remarkable audition stories in the recent NFL history after the Giants fired Shane Bowen in Week 12 following a series of defensive collapses. Bullen was promoted from outside linebacker coach to lead the unit. He inherited a bottom 5 defense and within weeks transformed them into a top 12 unit statistically, nearly saving the Giants' season and earning himself serious defensive coordinator consideration. They dropped from 27.8 points per game, which was 30th, to 22 points per game, which was 12th. The sack rate skyrocketed from 6.1%, which was 22nd, to 12.6%, which was 3rd. They improved in the red zone from 31st in the league to 5th in red zone touchdown percentage allowed, and helped develop rookie Abdul Carter into a late season force. 37% of Carter's total pressures came in just the final 4 games under Bullen's play calling. He's known for having a bit of a pass rush pedigree, which would not hurt our current situation. He was in Arizona in 2020 to 2021 and coached Chandler Jones to 10.5 sacks and Hassan Reddick to 12.5 sacks, and career high and Pro Bowl seasons for Hassan Reddick. The Cardinals ranked 5th in the NFL in sacks during that span. Then in Miami from 2013 to 2015, assisted in the development of Cameron Wake and Olivier Vernon, making Miami one of only a few teams with 2 top 20 sack leaders. Bullen's philosophy is defined as players over plays and aggressive multiplicity. Unlike Bowen's static approach, Bullen runs an aggressive scheme heavily influenced by Vance Joseph. That was his mentor in Miami and Arizona. It features high blitz rates, nearly 40% under his interim tenure, and simulated pressure. So probably pretty similar to what you're going to get from, number one, a Minnesota-style defense, as well as maybe sort of a Wink Martindale, high blitz rate type stuff. His main adjustment upon taking over the Giants was trimming the menu. He simplified calls so players could stop thinking and start flying to the ball. He believes in moving star rushers like Brian Burns and Abdul Carter around the formation to create one-on-one mismatches rather than leaving them in one position. Freaking, that's an automatic. If we're not doing that with our guys, that's a problem. He has also completed Dallas, by the way, is flying. They have talked to a bunch of people, but he completed an interview with Dallas. He is a top internal candidate for the Giants, and is another guy that is seen as sort of a rising star. And he's also seen as possibly a fallback option for people that maybe miss out on big names like Wink Martindale, or possibly are not interested in Wink Martindale for his, maybe his personality, might be looking for somebody like this. Then a really interesting name that I didn't understand, I had to double, triple check, that a lot of Packer fans, like Jim Leonard in a different cycle, were very interested in. This last time when we ended up hiring Jeff Hafley, probably the top name on most people's list, Zach Orr. Now, it doesn't make sense because Zach Orr was just talked about him, defensive coordinator for the Ravens. Still is, in fact. But with the departure of their head coach, although I don't think he's officially been fired, apparently they've allowed him to go interview for different places because, you have to hire a coach, and that coach will have to make determinations on who stays and who goes. And obviously, out of respect for your staff, you're not going to say, no, you're not allowed to go interview. You have to stay here and see what happens. So he's available. And although things are not going great in Baltimore, and that's going to hurt him, it is worth noting that, again, if you're looking at the Seattle Seahawks and saying, I want that defense, I want the aggressive, violent kind of, Zach Orr, if you had to pick somebody to run this defense, I don't know that there's anybody better than Zach Orr. In fact, he's the guy. Remember, there were a bunch of Ravens guys, and the Ravens John Harbaugh got to handpick which of the Ravens guys got to stay and be the defensive coordinator. Orr was the guy that was picked. Of all the other guys that were really impressive, they had a huge staff of guys, and I was like, any one of these four I'd be happy with, and they all went and got jobs all around the NFL. Orr was the guy that the Ravens said, no, you stay here and continue this legacy. Handpicked by John Harbaugh to succeed Mike Macdonald in 2024, although DVOA obviously not as impressed, and there were some drop-offs. There's still some very impressive things here. Baltimore ranked top 10 in several categories, including rush defense, 80.1 yards per game, which was first. Rushing yards per run, 3.6 per rush, which is first. Sacks, 54, which is second. QB hits, 115, second. Yards per play, 5.2, which is sixth. Scoring, 21.2 points per game, which is ninth. And total defense, 324.1 yards per game, which is 10th. The unit produced 5 Pro Bowlers, including Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, Nnamdi Madubuike, Roquan Smith, and Kyle Van Noy. 2 AP first-team All-Pros in Humphrey and Smith, and 1 AP second-team All-Pro in Hamilton. Now, there were struggles. There was an identity crisis in 2025. Baltimore's defense regressed, finishing 31st in pass defense and 18th in points allowed. The unit was devastated by injuries, with 7 of 11 starters, including All-Pros Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith, sidelined for significant stretches. Similar to his playing style, Orr's defense hit its stride in the final month, though it wasn't enough to secure a deep playoff run. So that's worth kind of digging into. Again, overall, I know it wasn't as good. It's certainly worth keeping an eye on, or maybe doing a little bit of a deeper dive into what went right, what went wrong, whatever. Because again, this is like the guy that everybody wanted, Orr. So we'll see. It's definitely worth keeping an eye on. Orr runs a modernized version of the Ravens way, a system built on complexity and physicality. Like McDonald, Orr uses simulated pressure to make the quarterback believe a blitz is coming from one side, only to drop those players and bring pressure from the opposite side. He prefers a match principle in the secondary, which requires higher IQ safeties like Hamilton. We fortunately have those to make post-snap reads. The violent mandate. Orr's philosophy is rooted in his linebacker roots. He famously told his unit in 2025, "We're not just looking for stops, we're looking to physically overwhelm the opponent." He showed a willingness to move away from heavy blitzing in late 2025 when his secondary was depleted, shifting toward more shell coverages to protect his corners. He's already completed interviews with the Dallas Cowboys. He is very heavily linked to the New York Giants, considering John Harbaugh just got hired over there. In fact, that would make a ton of sense for Harbaugh to just bring him with, but we'll see. And if he doesn't, then it's like, well, what does that tell us? You know what I mean? So I don't know. We'll see. But that'll be probably the top thing to keep an eye on, is if he follows him over to the Giants. Then we got Jonathan Gannon. Gannon's kind of a weird one. He was a head coach that was fired. He's apparently interviewing for the head coaching vacancy for the Tennessee Titans, but is also scheduled for an in-person interview with the Dallas Cowboys for the DC job and the Commanders for the defensive coordinator job. So it's kind of a weird deal here. But Gannon's an I mean, I always like the guys that are, you grab those guys that are underqualified for that next level and overqualified for this level. In other words, he got a head coaching job because he's a very good defensive coordinator, but he's not quite a good enough head coach. He's the former Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator from 21 and 22. Had an appalling record of 15 and 36 with the Cardinals, but he remains one of the most respected defensive minds in the league. He has a reputation as a teacher and high-energy culture builder that has made him an immediate top-tier candidate for vacant defensive coordinator roles. Gannon's stock is largely built on his historic 2022 season with the Eagles. His defense recorded 70 sacks, the third most in NFL history for a single season. 4 different players, Hassan Reddick, Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat, and Brandon Graham, recorded 10-plus sacks, which is an NFL record. Finished the 2022 season as the number 1 passing defense in the NFL with 179.8 yards. Oh no, that can't be real. Gannon does the whole hits philosophy thing? Oh, I hate that. Hustle, intensity, takeaways, and smarts. So stupid. Anyways, light boxes, too high shell. While they had 70 sacks in 2022, he rarely blitzes. His blitz rate in Arizona never exceeded 26%, relies on a front four that can win one-on-one matchups without needing extra help. That could possibly work here in Green Bay, obviously, with the staff that we have. His number 1 priority is limiting 20-yard plays, the bend but don't break approach. Oh, Lord. I mean, I get it. It's not going to be a popular pick in Green Bay, though. That's all I'm saying. Then we got, we got 6 more. Oh, my Lord. Aaron Whitecotton, Cowboys defensive line coach. This might be mostly just the Cowboys kind of throwing the guy a bone kind of thing because they're working with everybody. But he was the Jets defensive line coach 21 to 24, currently the Cowboys defensive line coach. Highly respected technician whose career is inexplicably linked to the dominance of Quinnen Williams. He is the Plan B candidate for the Cowboys, a trusted in-house voice who is like, you know what? We're going to skip it. We're short on time, and this feels like a fake thing to me. Then we got Patrick Graham. Patrick Graham, again, is a guy that is getting head coaching interviews, but also defensive coordinator interviews. I don't think he's expected to get any head coaching jobs, so DC is probably going to where he's end up. In fact, the only head coaching job that I'm aware of that he's scheduled for is Miami, so it sucks to suck. Washington apparently has requested an interview with Graham for the defensive coordinator job. So he's been the Raiders defensive coordinator since 2022. He's a Yale graduate, also often called the professor due to his high-level intelligence and multilingual approach to football. He's one of the few coaches to successfully survive 3 separate head coaching changes with the same team, McDaniels, Pierce, and Carroll in Las Vegas, which speaks to the universal respect he commands. We saw other people that have gone through that, and it is impressive to have a new coach come in and be like, you're the guy I want leading. 3 different times. That's impressive. Graham is credited with turning the Raiders defense into a formidable unit despite offensive struggles. In 2023, over the final 10 weeks of 2023, his defense led the NFL in points allowed at 16. He oversaw Max Crosby's 14.5 sack season in 2023 and Christian Wilkins' career-best 2024 campaign. Despite the team's 4-13 record in 2024, the defense finished with the top 15 in total yards, rushing yards, and pass yards allowed. He was also the defensive coordinator for the Giants in 2020. He improved the scoring defense from 25th to 9th in the NFL, helped develop James Bradbury into an all-pro corner, and made Leonard Williams an 11.5 sack interior force. Graham, as a game plan specialist, refuses to be tied to a specific system. He seamlessly switches from 3-4 to 4-3. In 2025, he notably used light boxes, 6 or fewer men, paired with 4-man fronts to invite the run but stop it through superior technique. My eyes are just, dude, I'm fried here. Unlike Wink Martindale's aggression, Graham prefers 2 high safety shells to keep everything in front of the defense. He asks his corners to play aggressive match where their responsibilities change based on the receiver's route stem. He's known for using complex terminology that he manages to make simple for players. His Yale background shows in how he scouts the scout, finding tendencies in how opposing coordinators call plays. Then we have Joe Cullen, Kansas City Chiefs defensive line coach since 2022, 58 years old. High-demand defensive coordinator candidate in the 2026 cycle. Obviously, Kansas City has for a very long time had a impressive and reputable defense. Not as much this year, obviously, but still, if anybody's looking to poach that Kansas City defense, again, aggressive defense, if that's what you're looking for, this is your guy if you're looking for a Chiefs defense. Widely regarded as one of the best defensive line coaches in football history, after decades of churning out Pro Bowlers in Baltimore and Jacksonville, he became the secondary architect of the Chiefs' defensive dynasty. Cullen is known for his +2 intensity, a coaching style that demands every player give 2 extra reps of effort on every single snap. That's okay. Okay, guys, here's the plan. I want you to do your best and then do a little better. Freaking genius. In 2026, he's a primary target for teams looking to inject a Baltimore/Chiefs-style toughness into their culture. While with the Chiefs, Cullen was a key piece in Kansas City's 3 consecutive Super Bowl appearances. Under Cullen, Chris Jones tied his career high with 15.5 sacks in 2022 and earned 3 straight All-Pro selections. Transformed rookie George Karlaftis into a 10-sack producer and turned depth players like Charles Omenihu and Tershawn Wharton into high-impact starters. Helped lead a unit that finished with a franchise-best 15-2 record, leading the NFL in second-half shutouts. While with the Jaguars as the defensive coordinator in 2021, that was the Urban Meyer era where everything was awful. Cullen's defense was the lone bright spot. Jacksonville's sack totals jumped from 18 to 32 in just 1 year under his leadership. He moved Josh Allen, the pass rusher, into a hybrid stand-up role, resulting in Allen leading the team in tackles, sacks, and passes defended. Cullen's system is a 3-4-4-3 hybrid attacking front. Having spent 5 years in Baltimore, he brings the aggressive multiple-look philosophy where any of the front 7 can be a rusher or a dropper. He preaches that scheme is secondary to effort. His units are famous for grabbing grass, hunkering down against the run, and pursuing the ball with a 100% sprint rate. He loves to sugar the gaps, lining up multiple players in the A and B gaps to force the offensive line to change their protections, only to drop these players into coverage and blitz from the slot. Again, very similar to that whole, well, because he's a Baltimore guy, that Baltimore Ravens flavor. He has already completed an interview with the Washington Commanders, currently considered a front runner to replace Joe Witt there. It's another guy you need to seriously consider because this is sort of a rare thing to have one of these Chiefs guys become available. Andy Reid is allowing it because of the missed playoffs. He's letting his guys kind of explore some other opportunities. Again, there's a lot of good options, but this is one you don't want to just overlook. Then we have Denard Wilson, currently Tennessee Titans defensive coordinator. Again, shouldn't be available as a defensive coordinator job, but when you blow up your coaching staff, guys become available. Would you be surprised to find out In 2023, prior to becoming defensive coordinator for Tennessee, he was the defensive backs coach for Baltimore. Baltimore. 43 years old, pretty much the same as everybody. Dennard Wilson is a self-described teacher whose career is definitely defined by getting elite production out of secondaries. Former NFL safety himself, very popular thing in this cycle. He has spent over a decade rising through the coaching ranks, often serving as a pass game coordinator for top-tier defenses like the Eagles and Jets. He's known for high-intensity, obnoxious communication style that demands cornerbacks play physically at the line of scrimmage. With the Titans, 2024 and 2025, they had an attacking defense. Wilson took over the Titans' defense that had historically struggled with turnovers and transformed their identity. 2024 breakout in his first year as DC, Tennessee ranked number 2 in the NFL in total defense and number 2 in pass defense. 2025, while the unit regressed slightly due to significant midseason trades of veteran starters, Wilson still maintained a top 10 run defense and saw Jeffrey Simmons earn another All-Pro nod. He's credited with fixing a unit that was last in the league in interceptions in 2023, instilling a ball search mentality that led to a 40% increase in takeaways during his first season. He was also pass game coordinator for the Eagles in 2022. He oversaw the NFL's number 1 pass defense, mentored James Bradbury to an All-Pro season and Darius Slay to a Pro Bowl season, forming the most dominant corner duo in the league that season. He's heavily influenced by Todd Bowles and Greg Williams, emphasizing aggressive press man looks. Press everything. Wilson's primary philosophy is to disrupt the timing of the offense on the line. He wants his corners to be violent in their reroutes. He famously quotes General George Patton, "Nobody ever defended anything successfully. You're going to attack and attack some more." Drawing from his years in Baltimore under Mike Macdonald, he uses 2 high safety shells that roll into different coverages late on the play clock to confuse the quarterback. He prides himself on individual development. He's known for spending extra time on hand placement and eye discipline, which he credits for the rapid growth of players like Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore and Jamal Adams. You'll notice a lot of guys like to take credit for the same people. You got 3-4 people taking credit for the same people. That's all right. He has completed his interview with, I think I said this already, with Washington, maybe? I don't know. Again, he's still under contract with the Tennessee Titans, but he's allowed to search because they don't even have a head coach yet. Then we have Carl Scott, current Seahawks defensive backs coach and pass game coordinator. So again, if you want to go straight to the source in Seattle, here's your guy. Carl Scott's widely regarded as one of the most talented defensive back specialists in the game. He's the lone coaching holdover from the Pete Carroll era in Seattle, having been retained by Mike Macdonald in 2024 due to his elite teaching ability. In 2025, he reached star status after leading a Seahawks secondary that dominated the league, helping transform Seattle from a bottom-tier defense in 2023 to a historic unit in 2025, which is what we're currently watching. Scott's work in the 2025 season is being hailed as one of the best coaching performances in the NFL. The Seahawks secondary allowed only 193 passing yards per game in 2025. Seattle recorded 18 interceptions, fifth most in the NFL, and finished with an elite DVOA of negative 24.2. Handpicked and developed Tariq Woolen, Pro Bowl rookie season. Developed Devon Witherspoon, Defensive Rookie of the Year finalist, and rookie standout Nick Emanwari. Came out of Alabama. Served under Nick Saban, producing a literal assembly line of first-round talent, including Patrick Surtain and Trayvon Diggs. His 2020 unit at Alabama ranked first in the SEC in pass efficiency defense en route to a national championship. Scott's philosophy combines Nick Saban's discipline with Mike Macdonald's modern disguise. He specializes in matching coverages that appear to be simple zones but transform into tight man coverage based on receivers' breaks. He's famous for his accelerator teaching style, focusing on eye discipline and hand placement to allow DBs to play faster and their time speed. His primary metric for success is the explosive play rate. He prioritizes taking away the deep ball and forcing offenses into 10-plus play drives where they're more likely to make a mistake. That, by the way, is known as bend, don't break, just so we're all clear on that. He has completed a formal interview with the Washington Commanders for their defensive coordinator job. Dallas is also considering bringing him on board. If not, Seattle may look to promote him internally. Okay, so that is all I've got. We will try to keep a running list of coaches and interviews and what they're doing, where they're going, all that kind of stuff. And if any new names pop up, I know Packer fans want to know all about Al Harris, and we should hire Al Harris and that whole thing. Maybe, I don't know. As of right now, I don't think he's been talked about for any other teams, but we'll see. And obviously, we'll be interested in seeing what comes out as far as what the Packers want to do, who the Packers are looking to interview, etc. But again, that's kind of a little bit of a intro. I look forward to hopefully hearing from you guys. I'm not going to be able to do Packernet After Dark, which is upsetting. I should have done that first, but it's already 11 o'clock at night. I'm just not going to bother at this point. But either way, get your calls in. Let me know what you think. Where's your head at with some of these candidates currently? Again, a lot of good candidates. I mean, there's a Minnesota guy, there's a bunch of Ravens guys, there's a Chiefs guy, there's the young up-and-comers, there's the Wink Martindale ultimate aggression package. You know what I mean? There's no matter what you're looking for, there's a guy for you. So, anywho, I'm going to get out of here. I'm tired. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.